Today is Veterans Day in America, a day when we honor those who have served our armed forces. We have another day when we honor and remember those who died in the line of duty, Memorial Day, but Veterans Day is for the survivors, for those who have served and who returned home. And it doesn't matter whether their service actually took them into combat, we honor their service regardless. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Monday, November 11th, 2024. A surprising number of countries around the world set aside November 11th as a day of remembrance. The Commonwealth countries, Great Britain and the countries nominally bound together under the British Crown, observe November 11th as a day to remember those who died in armed conflicts for their respective countries. For them, it is more like our Memorial Day. They call it Remembrance Day. Still others call it Armistice Day. But whether it is observed to remember the war dead or to honor veterans, it is a day observed all around the world, one of the rare examples of a non-religious holiday observed worldwide. And why November 11th? It is because hostilities in World War I ceased at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 11 a.m. local time on November 11th, 1918. That most brutal and senseless of wars came to an end after the surrender of the German army to Allied forces earlier that morning. But up to that hour, fighting raged on in one of the deadliest battles ever, the battle known as the Meuse-Argonne Offensive. Over 1 million American troops took part in that battle, of whom over 95,000 were wounded and over 26,000 were killed. And that's just among the Americans. My personal interest in this battle, as some of you know, is that my grandfather was a young second lieutenant in the 90th Division, which placed them exactly in the center of the offensive, with 6 divisions to their north and 6 to the south. He commanded a machine gun company, which is to say he commanded a small group of enlisted men responsible for one machine gun. And of course, the enemy would have tried everything in its power to destroy that machine gun company. We have just a few artifacts from my grandfather's in our possession today. Chief among them is his helmet. It is rusted and corroded now, and the leather straps inside are all but gone. What sticks out, though, is a dent in the helmet, the apparent result of a piece of shrapnel that flew into his helmet, presumably as he wore it. It is a reminder to me of 2 things. First, it reminds me how tentative human existence is. My grandfather survived to have children, beginning 5 years later with my own father. How many were never born because of the death of one of his fellow soldiers. But the second thing it reminds me of is the audaciousness of young men like my grandfather to volunteer to serve. I know the Army drafted hundreds of thousands, but my guess is that my grandfather actually volunteered as he went through officer training and received a commission. Now, I don't know a lot about my grandfather, but I do know that he was a regular guy from a small Texas town with a young wife and a future he looked forward to. The reason I talk about him today is because people like him are the reason we observe Veterans Day. Like a lot of guys his age, he was willing to do his part when the nation called. But I'm sure he would just as soon have stayed home and tended his farm. But he didn't. He joined. He left home. He trained for war. He got on board a troop transport and traveled to a distant shore and put himself in harm's way, and almost certainly watched comrades die horrible deaths, not because there was an immediate threat to his own home and family, but just because his country called. But let's be clear, we Christians do not glorify war. Like most high-ranking military officials I've known, we would rather avoid it if at all possible. But it is not always possible. And when war becomes a necessity, regular people who could be doing 1,000 other things step up to the plate and put their lives on the line. So while we do not glorify war, we do honor those who put themselves on the line. As General William Tecumseh Sherman so aptly put it, war is hell. truly is. It is nothing to wish for, but sometimes it is something the few must rise to. So on this Veterans Day, no matter your views concerning war, it is worth our time to thank those who answered this particular call to service. Now may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.